It was a typical hot, dusty day in the American Southwest. The kind of day when the sun seemed to press down on everything, making the land feel like an endless oven. The rugged hills and dry, cracked earth stretched as far as the eye could see. This was the kind of place where you learned to survive, or you didn't survive at all. And for Sam Carter, it was the only place he ever truly called home. Sam had been a cowboy all his life. Born into the rough life of cattle herding and long days on horseback, he'd grown used to the silence of the desert, the hum of the wind in his ears, and the scent of dust that hung in the air. He had little interest in the politics of the world or the stories people told. His world was small, and that was fine with him. He spent most of his days alone, riding from one cattle ranch to another, looking for work or checking on the land he was helping to manage. He had no family left, and the only real companions were his horse and the few people he occasionally met along the way. But today was different. Today, something strange was waiting for him. As Sam rode along a familiar trail near the base of a low hill, the horse's hooves clopping steadily against the ground, Sam noticed something out of the corner of his eye. His hand instinctively went to the revolver at his side, a habit he had formed over the years of living in a land full of danger, both from people and the wild animals that roamed the area. He squinted against the sun and saw a figure lying in the dirt at the edge of a rock outcrop. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the heat, maybe a mirage, like the kind you heard about in old stories. But as he got closer, he saw the figure was a person, a woman, or, at least, what looked like a woman. She was dressed in clothes that Sam didn't recognize, something ragged but practical, like they had been thrown together with little care. Her long black hair was tangled, and she lay motionless, her face pale, her body bent awkwardly at an odd angle. Sam's horse slowed as he approached, his boots hitting the ground as he dismounted. He could feel a sudden unease settling in his chest, but he wasn't one to turn away from someone in need. He had grown up in a place where helping others was a part of life. You helped where you could, no matter who they were. But as his boots crunched on the ground toward her, Sam couldn't help but wonder if helping this woman might be a mistake. He knelt beside her carefully, his hand brushing through the dust on the side of her face. There was a faint breath, and he knew she was alive. Her eyes fluttered open, just enough to reveal a flash of confusion, fear, and something else, something wild. "Hey there," Sam spoke gently, his voice low. He wasn't sure if she could understand him or not. "You all right?" The woman blinked at him, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Her lips parted as if to speak, but the words didn't come out. Instead, a faint groan escaped her. She tried to push herself up but collapsed back onto the ground, wincing in pain. Sam could see her left leg was twisted unnaturally beneath her, the angle far too sharp, a sign of a serious injury. "Easy there," Sam said, his voice soft but firm. "Don't try to move. You're hurt bad." He quickly looked around, his eyes scanning the horizon. There was no sign of anyone else, no other people, no tracks. Whoever had left her here had made sure she was alone. His heart sank as he realized just how vulnerable she was. Without thinking twice, Sam pulled her gently into his arms, lifting her with surprising care. Her head lolled against his chest, and Sam noticed the faintest smell of smoke and blood. The scent of someone who had been through something much worse than just a simple fall. "Where you come from," Sam murmured, more to himself than to her. His mind raced as he considered the possibilities. Apache territory was not too far from here, but Sam wasn't sure if this woman was Apache or not. He could barely see the details of her face. But he noticed something about her eyes. The sharpness. The quick, alert way she looked at things. It reminded him of the wildness of the land itself. Whoever she wasn't from any town he knew. He carefully placed her back onto the ground, making sure she was comfortable, and then quickly worked to remove the makeshift bandages she had wrapped around her leg. He didn't have much with him, just the bare essentials a cowboy would carry, but he had enough to tend to basic wounds. The injury was bad, Her leg was broken, that much was clear. There was a lot of blood, and Sam knew that without proper help, she could bleed out right here in the desert. He wasn't sure how long she'd been lying here, but it had to have been a while. She was too weak to resist as Sam carefully cleaned the wound, using water from his canteen and tearing strips from his shirt to make a temporary splint. His mind was focused on the task, but his eyes kept darting to the horizon, watching for any sign of trouble. The last thing he wanted was to get caught in a situation he couldn't handle. As he finished up, the woman let out a soft moan, her eyes opening again. But this time, she seemed to focus more on him. Sam could see the confusion in her eyes. She didn't recognize him, of course. She probably had no idea who he was or why he was helping her. "I'm Sam," he said, offering her a faint smile. "Sam Carter." The woman blinked, and to his surprise, she managed to speak. Her voice was weak, but clear enough. "Apache," she whispered, her eyes locking onto his with a strange intensity. You help?" Sam frowned, unsure what she meant by that. He wasn't exactly a friend of the Apache, no one was. Not around these parts, but he had heard stories. Some were of fierce battles, others of the kind of deep respect they had for the land and their people. "You're Apache?" Sam asked, almost as if to confirm what she had said. He had no idea if she would even respond, but she nodded slightly. "Apache," she repeated, her voice softer now. She closed her eyes, her face twisting in pain. Sam sighed, shaking his head. "I don't know what you're running from, but you're safe here. I'll take care of you. At least until you can walk again." He paused, his hand rubbing the back of his neck as he thought about what to do next. "But I can't leave you out here alone. We need to get to my cabin. It's not far." He wasn't sure if she understood him fully, but he knew she didn't have much of a choice. She couldn't stay here. Not like this. As Sam stood up and began to gather his things, he couldn't shake the feeling that helping this woman, this Apache girl, wasn't just an act of kindness. It felt like it was something more. Something that would change the course of his life. What would people think if they knew? What if the wrong person found out? But before he could answer his own questions, he glanced down at the girl. Sam took a deep breath and set out, the wind at his back, knowing that the road ahead would be anything but easy. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a story that would challenge everything he thought he knew about loyalty, culture, and love. The days passed slowly as Sam continued to care for the Apache girl, whose name was revealed to be Sana. She wasn't an easy patient, but she was strong, stronger than Sam expected. While her leg was still healing, she insisted on helping around the cabin. At first, it was small things, sweeping the floor, gathering firewood, but as the days went by, she became more and more independent. She spoke a bit more, though her English was still limited, and she taught Sam a few words of her language. In return, he taught her how to ride a horse and use a rifle. Though they still had some awkward moments, their bond grew with each passing day. Sam found himself growing more comfortable around her, and he even began to look forward to their quiet dinners by the fire. She would speak to him in her soft, melodic voice, telling him stories of her people, stories about the land, their traditions, and the way of life she had been raised with. Sam listened, fascinated. He had always been curious about the Apache, but he'd never heard their stories from someone who had lived them. But despite the peace Sam had found with her, he couldn't escape the nagging feeling that this was only the beginning. He couldn't help but wonder what would happen once Sana's leg healed completely. He didn't know what she intended to do, and he didn't know how to handle the growing emotions he was feeling. They were from two completely different worlds, two completely different people, and he couldn't deny that the bond between them was beginning to feel personal. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a brilliant orange, a group of riders appeared in the distance. Sam had been out checking his traps when he noticed them. They weren't settlers or other cowboys, but something about them made Sam uneasy. They were riding in a tight formation, moving with purpose. They were Apache. He immediately thought of Sana and hurried back to the cabin. He found her sitting near the fire, preparing a simple meal. When she saw him rush in, her eyes narrowed, and she stood up quickly. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice calm, but with a hint of concern. "There's a group of Apache riders coming this way," Sam said, his voice tense. "I don't know what they want, but we need to be ready. Stay inside, and don't go near them, unless I say so." Sana nodded, though she didn't seem as worried as Sam had expected. "They are my people," she said quietly. "Your people?" Sam repeated, his heart skipping a beat. He hadn't expected her to say that. He had no idea she was from a group that might come looking for her. The tension in his chest grew. He hadn't fully understood the danger he might be in by helping her. "I am Apache," Sana said, her voice steady now. "They are not here to harm you." Sam didn't know what to think. He had never been one to trust outsiders, and the idea of a group of Apache showing up at his door made him nervous. He hadn't exactly made himself popular with the local settlers by helping Sana, and the last thing he wanted was trouble from a tribe that could easily overpower him. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. The riders arrived shortly after, pulling their horses to a halt just outside the cabin. There were 6 of them in total, all wearing the distinctive clothing of the Apache leather and fur, with beads and feathers woven into their hair. They looked serious, and Sam's hand instinctively went to his rifle. But as the leader of the group dismounted, he gave a small smile and walked toward the cabin without any hint of hostility. "Sam Carter," the man called out, his voice deep and firm. He was older than Sam by several years, his face weathered by years of sun and wind, but his eyes were sharp. There was no doubt he had seen many battles in his time. "That's me," Sam replied cautiously, not lowering his rifle. "And you are?" "I am Kachina, a friend of Sana," the man said, his voice carrying a quiet authority. He then turned to Sana, who was standing just inside the doorway. "You are well?" Well?" Sana nodded, her face softening. "I am well," she replied, and there was something in the way she said it that made Sam wonder just how close she was to this man. The Apache leader turned back to Sam, his expression serious. "We thank you for your kindness toward her. She is important to our people, and it is rare for one from your world to offer help to someone like her." Sam lowered his rifle slowly, though he was still cautious. "I didn't do it for any reward. I just helped because she needed it," he said, trying to make his position clear. "But if you're here to take her back, I'm not going to stop you." Kachina gave a soft chuckle, shaking his head. "No, Sam Carter. We are not here to take her back. She is free to choose her path. She has already made her choice, and we honor it." Sana looked down at the ground, then stepped forward, her voice steady but quiet. "I have decided to stay here," she said, looking Sam directly in the eyes. "I owe you my life, and in my culture, that means something." Sam felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the weight of her words. He had no idea what kind of custom or tradition she was speaking of, but he could feel that it was important, and as much as he didn't want to admit it, he also realized that he had come to care for her in a way he hadn't expected. He wasn't sure what to say. But before he could respond, Kachina spoke again. "She calls you her husband now, Sam Carter," Kachina said, his voice low but clear. "That is what our people do when one saves another's life. It is a bond, a responsibility. She is now bound to you, and you to her." Sam felt a lump form in his throat. He stared at Sana, not sure if she was joking or serious, but the look in her eyes told him she wasn't joking. She was completely serious. You call me your husband?" Sam asked, his voice betraying his confusion. Sana nodded, her face calm, but with a trace of something deep in her eyes. Yes, you saved me. I belong to you now. In our way. Sam's heart pounded in his chest. He had never imagined anything like this. He had helped her out of a sense of duty, but he hadn't expected it to turn into something so much deeper. This was more than just an injury and a debt. This was a bond. A connection that went beyond simple gratitude. Before Sam could say anything else, Kachina placed a hand on his shoulder. Do not be afraid, Sam Carter. The bond is one of respect, not ownership. But it is a bond. Nonetheless. Sana stood there, her back straight and her eyes unwavering, as if this were the only thing that made sense to her. Sam could feel his world tilting. He had always thought of himself as a man of the land, someone who needed nothing more than the open sky and the freedom to ride. But now, in the face of Sana's claim, he realized that his life was changing in ways he couldn't have predicted. As the Apache riders turned to leave, Kachina gave Sam one last look. Take care of her, Sam, and know that the Apache people will watch over you as well. The riders disappeared into the desert, and Sam was left standing there, alone with Sana. The sun had nearly set, and the air had grown cooler. The cabin, once quiet, now felt full of questions. Sam didn't know what to do or how to react to everything that had just happened. But one thing was clear. His life was no longer just his own. Sana was here, and she had made her claim. And whether he was ready for it or not, Sam knew his world would never be the same. The days following the Apache riders' visit were strange for Sam. It was as if the world around him had shifted in some quiet, invisible way. He couldn't stop thinking about what Kachina had said, that Sana had called him her husband, according to her people's customs. And even though Sam had spent his life in a world of dusty trails, cattle herding, and isolation, he found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions he wasn't sure how to handle. He wasn't even sure if he was ready for the responsibility that came with this new bond. But he knew there was no turning back. Sana seemed perfectly at ease with it. She carried herself with quiet confidence, and in the days after the Apache riders left, she continued to help around the cabin, as she had before. But something had changed. Her eyes, once uncertain and cautious, now seemed more certain. She spoke to Sam more openly, even beginning to make plans for the future, something Sam had never expected. One morning, as Sam was preparing breakfast, Sana came into the cabin with a bundle of herbs she had gathered from the nearby hills. She set them down on the table, her hands steady and sure, a stark contrast to the way she had been when Sam first found her. "You've been collecting herbs again?" Sam asked, glancing up from his cooking. Sana nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "My people use them for healing. I want to learn more about them. You don't have to worry about me. I can help now." Sam had always appreciated her quiet determination. But there was something different in her voice this time. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about something bigger. She was starting to carve out her place in this world, and Sam couldn't help but admire her strength. But at the same time, a seed of doubt began to grow in his mind. How would the world outside their little cabin view their relationship? Would they understand it? Would they accept it? As if on cue, a knock came at the door, interrupting Sam's thoughts. He tensed, his hand instinctively going to his rifle. Over the past few weeks, he had grown more cautious, unsure of who might show up at his door next. Sana, too, looked uneasy, her eyes flicking toward the door. "I'll handle it," Sam said, giving her a reassuring glance before walking toward the door. He opened it cautiously, and to his surprise, standing there was a man he recognized. Tom Granger, one of the settlers from the nearby town. Tom was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a rough face, worn from years of working the land. He had been in the area for as long as Sam had, but they hadn't always seen eye to eye. Tom and the other settlers were suspicious of anyone who didn't fit into their world, especially the Apache. And Sam knew that having an Apache girl living on his land was bound to cause trouble eventually. "What do you want, Tom?" Sam asked, his voice guarded. Tom didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I've been hearing things, Sam," he said, his voice low. "Things about you and that Apache girl you've been taking care of. People are starting to talk." Sam's chest tightened, but he kept his cool. "People don't like it," Tom said, his eyes narrowing. "The settlers are getting worried. They don't trust the Apache, and they certainly don't trust you for helping her. You're putting yourself in danger, Sam, and you're putting the rest of us in danger too." Sam felt a flicker of anger rise in his chest. He had always kept to himself, never looking for trouble. But now, it seemed trouble had found him. He wasn't sure what Tom expected from him, but it was clear that the tension was only going to grow. "I've done nothing wrong," Sam said, his voice steady but firm. "I helped her because she needed it. That's all. It's not your business." Tom shook his head. "You don't understand, do you? We've all worked hard to build this town, to make it a safe place. And now you're just giving it all away for some Apache girl who might be more trouble than she's worth. The settlers are already talking about running her out of here. And if you're not careful, Sam, they might come for you next." Sam felt his fists clench, but he held back his anger. He didn't want to escalate things, but it was clear that this wasn't going away. Tom was only the first to come to him, and Sam knew there would be more. This was just the beginning. "If you've got a problem with me, then take it up with me," Sam said, his voice quiet but strong. "But don't come to me with threats." Tom's expression darkened, and he took a step closer, his jaw tight. "This isn't just about you, Sam. It's about all of us. You're playing with fire. You've got to make a choice. Her or the rest of us." With that, Tom turned and walked away, leaving Sam standing in the doorway, his heart pounding. He didn't know what to do. The tension was building, and he felt like he was standing in the middle of a storm, unsure which way to turn. When Sam went back inside, he found Sana sitting at the table, her face unreadable. She had heard everything. "Who was that?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "Tom Granger," Sam replied, his mind still racing. "He's one of the settlers. He doesn't like what I've been doing taking care of you. He said people are starting to talk." Sana didn't respond immediately. She just sat there, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. Sam could see the worry in her eyes, but she didn't say anything about it. "You're not the only one in danger," Sam continued, his voice low. "It's not just about us anymore. The settlers are scared, and they're looking for someone to blame." "I understand," Sana said quietly. "But I cannot go back to the life I had. You saved me, and in my culture, that means something. I belong here, with you." Sam felt his heart swell with a strange mix of emotions. He didn't know how to protect her from the outside world, from the dangers that seemed to grow by the day. He was just one man, and the world around them was full of people who didn't understand. He had no idea how to handle all this, how to make peace with the settlers, or how to convince them that Sana wasn't a threat. But one thing was clear. He couldn't turn his back on her. Not now. Not after everything they had been through together. Sana's hand reached out, touching his gently. "You don't have to fight alone." Sam looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of calm settle in his chest. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for sure. He would stand by Sana, no matter what. The world outside was changing, and the storm that had been brewing for weeks was finally coming to a head. Sam and Sana would have to face it together, whatever it might bring. The days after Tom Granger's visit were some of the hardest Sam had ever known. The tension in the air felt heavier than it ever had before. Word of his relationship with Sana was spreading through the nearby town, and it wasn't long before more settlers came knocking at his door, asking questions and expressing their concerns. They weren't just concerned for him, they were concerned for the safety of their families, for the safety of their community. Each time Sam spoke to one of them, he felt a tightness in his chest. He didn't want trouble, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it was coming, whether he wanted it or not. The people of the town had always been wary of the Apache, and now that he was involved with one of them, Sam knew they viewed him differently. They saw him as an outsider, someone who had betrayed them by helping someone they considered a threat. Sana could see the worry in Sam's eyes. She knew the weight of what they were facing. But she also knew something Sam hadn't yet realized. Their bond wasn't just about helping her or making sure she was safe. It was about something deeper, a connection that had been formed under the most unlikely of circumstances, but one that couldn't easily be broken. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant mountains and the stars began to appear, Sam sat outside the cabin, his gaze lost in the horizon. The air was cool, but the tension in his heart made him feel restless. He didn't know what to do next. Every time he tried to think of a way to ease the growing conflict, he found no answers. Sana joined him, sitting beside him quietly, her presence a calm that Sam hadn't realized he needed so desperately. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, looking out at the wide expanse of land that stretched in every direction. "I don't know what to do," Sam finally muttered, his voice heavy. "The settlers, they're all talking. They want me to choose. They want me to pick sides. And I don't know how to do that." Sana's eyes softened as she turned to look at him. "You don't have to choose sides, Sam. You don't have to fight for anyone but yourself. And for us." Sam's brow furrowed. But he didn't interrupt her. He wanted to understand where she was coming from, even though it seemed impossible. "You saved my life," she continued, her voice gentle. "In our way. That means we are connected. We don't belong to anyone else now. Not the settlers, not anyone, but each other." Sam swallowed hard, his heart aching. He had never been a man of many words, and hearing Sana speak with such certainty made him feel both reassured and uncertain. How could he make her understand that the world they were living in wasn't as simple as that? The world outside their cabin was full of rules, full of people who didn't understand them, who would never understand them. But Sana wasn't finished. She reached out, taking his hand in hers. Her fingers were warm and steady, and for a moment, Sam let himself feel the comfort of her touch. "We don't need their approval," she said softly. "What we have is between us, and if the rest of the world cannot see it, then we must make our own path, together." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, Sam felt the weight of the world start to lift, if only just a little. He had always been someone who kept his distance from others. But Sana was teaching him something new, that sometimes, the connections we make with others are what truly matter, not the opinions of those who don't understand. The following days were filled with a quiet resolve. Sam and Sana continued to live their lives as they always had, focusing on each other and the small tasks that kept their world running. They worked together, shared meals, and talked long into the nights. And as the days turned into weeks, Sam began to realize something. He was no longer afraid of what the future might hold. He was no longer afraid of the judgment or the whispers behind his back. What mattered was that he and Sana were together, and that was all that truly counted. But the outside world wasn't so easily ignored. One morning, as Sam was fixing the fence near the edge of his property, a group of settlers arrived at the cabin. This time, there were more of them, 5 or 6 men, all with serious expressions and determined eyes. Sam knew what this meant. He had seen enough to understand when trouble was brewing. They dismounted their horses and stood in front of the cabin, looking at Sam with a mix of suspicion and determination. The leader of the group, a man named Carl, was a rough-looking fellow with a thick beard and a permanent scowl on his face. He stepped forward, eyeing Sam carefully. "We've been talking," Carl said, his voice gruff. "And we don't like what's been going on here, Sam. We've seen you with that Apache girl. We don't want her here, and we don't want you involved with her anymore. She's dangerous, and you're putting us all at risk." Sam didn't move, didn't even blink. He had expected this, and he wasn't going to back down. He had been calm before, but now there was something in him that had hardened. Something that told him he had to stand his ground. "She's not dangerous," Sam said firmly, his voice steady. "And I've done nothing wrong. I won't turn her away, just because you're scared. She's under my protection, and she's staying here." Carl's eyes flashed with anger. But Sam could see that he was choosing his words carefully. He was trying to keep control of the situation, trying to find a way to force Sam into submission without making things worse. "You're making a mistake, Sam," Carl warned. "This town won't stand for it. If you won't listen to us, then maybe you'll listen to your own people. Maybe they'll set you straight." Sam felt a chill run through him. He knew what Carl meant. He was threatening to bring more people into this. He wasn't just talking about the settlers anymore. He was talking about making this a bigger issue. But Sam stood tall, meeting Carl's gaze without flinching. "You don't have to worry about me," Sam said quietly. "I've made my choice. And if you can't accept that, then that's on you." The settlers exchanged glances, and for a moment, there was a heavy silence. Finally, Carl spoke again, his voice quieter this time, though still filled with frustration. "Fine," he said, his tone filled with resignation. "But don't say we didn't warn you." Without another word, the group mounted their horses and turned to leave. Sam watched them go, his heart still pounding in his chest. He knew this wasn't over. It couldn't be. There were too many people who would never understand what he had with Sana, too many who saw their bond as a threat. But Sam wasn't afraid anymore. He had made his choice, and so had Sana. They had each other, and that was all they needed. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. As Sam returned to the cabin, Sana was waiting for him by the door. She didn't say anything at first, just watched him with a quiet understanding in her eyes. "They'll never stop, will they?" she asked softly. Sam shook his head. "No, they won't. But I'm not afraid of them anymore. We'll figure this out. Together." Sana smiled, her face softening with the warmth that had always drawn Sam to her. "Together," she echoed. And with that, Sam knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he had already found the most important thing in his life. Someone who would stand by him, no matter what. The world outside might never accept them, but they had each other, and that was all they needed.